Welcome back to our reading of the Tales of Beedle the Bard. Before we get started, I would really love to ask everyone to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. If you enjoy me reading these books, I'd love to keep doing them. Today we're going to resume our chapter 2 of the Tales of Beedle the Bard. It's called The Fountain of Fair Fortune. High on a hill in an enchanted garden, enclosed by tall walls and protected by strong magic, flowed the Fountain of Fair Fortune. Once a year, between the hours of sunrise and sunset on the longest day, a single unfortunate was given the chance to fight their way to the fountain, bathe in its waters, and receive fair fortune forevermore. On the appointed day, hundreds of people traveled from all over the kingdom to reach the garden walls before dawn. Male and female, rich and poor, young and old, of magical means and without. They gathered in the darkness, each hoping that they would be the one to gain the entrance to the garden. 3 witches, each with her burden of woe, met on the outskirts of the crowd and told one another their sorrows as they waited for sunrise. The first, by name Asha, was sick of a malady no healer could cure. I'm guessing that this is Asha. Beautiful wardrobe. Oh, there's a knight. I wonder who he is. Whoa, large lineup. Beautiful illustration. I love the outfits. She hoped that the fountain would banish her symptoms and grant her a long and happy life. The second, by name Althea, had been robbed of her home, her gold, and her wand by an evil sorcerer. She hoped that the fountain might relieve her of powerlessness and poverty. The third, by name Amata, had been deserted by a man whom she loved dearly, and she thought her heart would never mend. She hoped that the fountain would relieve her of her grief and longing. Pitying each other, the 3 women agreed that, should the chance befall them, they would unite and try to reach the fountain together. The sky was rent with the first ray of sun, and a chink in the wall opened. The crowd surged forward, and each of them shrieking their claim for the fountain's benison. Creepers from the garden beyond snaked through the pressing mass and twisted themselves around the first witch, Asha. She grasped the wrist of the second witch, Althea, who seized tight upon the robes of the third witch, Amata. And Amata became caught upon the armor of a dismal-looking knight, that was the knight in the photo, who was seated on a bone-thin horse. The creepers tugged the 3 witches through the chink in the wall, and the knight was dragged off his steed after them. The furious screams of the disappointed throng rose upon the morning air, then fell silent as the garden walls sealed once more. Asha and Althea were angry with Amata, who had accidentally brought along the knight. Only one can bathe in the fountain. It will be hard enough to decide which of us it will be without adding another. Okay, so these are the 3. Guessing this is Amata, this is Althea, and this is Asha. And this is the knight, obviously. Now, Sir Luckless, as the knight was known in the land outside the walls, observed that these were witches, and, having no magic, nor any great skill at jousting or dueling with swords, nor anything that distinguished the non-magical man, was sure that he had no hope of beating the 3 women to the fountain. He therefore declared his intention of withdrawing outside the walls again. At this, Amata became angry too. "Faint heart," she chided him, "draw your sword, knight, and help us reach our goal." And so the 3 witches and the forlorn knight ventured forth into the enchanted garden, where rare herbs, fruit, and flowers grew in abundance on either side of the sunlit paths. They met no obstacle until they reached the foot of the hill on which the fountain stood. There, however, wrapped around the base of the hill, was a monstrous white worm, bloated and blind. At their approach, it turned a foul face upon them and uttered the following words: "Pay me the proof of your pain." Sir Luckless drew his sword and attempted to kill the beast, but his blade snapped. Looks pretty pitiful. Just love the illustration, how it really displays the stupidness of the worm. That must be the path to the fountain. Then Althea cast rocks at the worm, while Asha and Amata essayed every spell that might subdue or entrance it, but the power of their wands was no more effective than their friend's stone or the knight's steel. The worm would not let them pass. The sun rose higher and higher in the sky, and Asha, despairing, began to weep. Then the great worm placed its face upon hers and drank the tears from her cheeks. Its thirst, usage, the worm slithered aside and vanished into a hole in the ground. Rejoicing at the worm's disappearance, the three witches and the knight began to climb the hill, sure that they would reach the fountain before noon. Halfway up the steep slope, however, they came across words cut into the ground before them. "Pay me the fruit of your labors." Sir Luckless took out his only coin and placed it upon the grassy hillside, but it rolled away and was lost. The three witches and the knight continued to climb, but though they walked for hours more, they advanced not a step. The summit came no nearer, and still the inscription lay in the earth before them. All were discouraged as the sun rose over their heads and began to sink towards the far horizon. But Althea walked faster and harder than any of them, and exhorted the others to follow her example, though she moved no further up the enchanted hill. "Courage, friends, and do not yield," she cried, wiping the sweat from her brow. As the drops fell glittering onto the earth, the inscription blocking their path vanished, and they found that they were able to move upwards once more. This is Althea. She's sweating. I wonder what these pouches are around her neck. And these are Ash's tears. Wow. Let's check out the illustration. That's a mata. Okay. Delighted by the removal of this second obstacle, they hurried towards the summit as fast as they could, until at last they glimpsed the fountain, glittering like crystal in a bower of flowers and trees. Before they could reach it, however, they came to a stream that ran round the hilltop, barring their way. In the depths of the clear water lay a smooth stone bearing the words, "Pay me the treasure of your past." Sir Luckless attempted to float across the stream on his shield, but it sank. The three witches pulled him from the water, then tried to leap the brook themselves, but it would not let them cross. And all the while, the sun was sinking lower in the sky. So they fell to pondering the meaning of the stone's message, and Amata was the first to understand. Taking her wand, she drew from her mind all the memories of happy times she had spent with her vanished lover, and dropped them into the rushing waters. The stream swept them away, and stepping stones appeared, and the three witches and the knight were able to pass at last onto the summit of the hill. The fountain shimmered before them, set amidst herbs and flowers, rare and more beautiful than any they had yet seen. The sky burned ruby, and it was time to decide which of them would bathe. Let's look back at this illustration because it is so large and gorgeous that really want everyone to see the detail. Let's go close up here. So the engravings here. So that's their path. Wow, beautiful. Before they could make their decision, however, frail Asha fell to the ground. Oh no. Exhausted by their struggle to the summit, she was close to death. Her 3 friends would have carried her to the fountain, but Asha was in mortal agony and begged them not to touch her. Then Althea hastened to pick all those herbs she thought most helpful and mixed them in Sir Luckless's gourd of water and poured the potion into Asha's mouth. At once, Asha was able to stand. What was more, all symptoms of her dread malady had vanished. "I'm cured," she cried. "I have no need of the fountain. Let Althea bathe." But Althea was busy collecting more herbs in her apron. "If I can cure this disease, I shall earn gold aplenty. Let Amata bathe." Sir Luckless bowed and gestured Amata toward the fountain, but she shook her head. The stream had washed away all regret for her lover, and she saw now that he had been cruel and faithless, and that it was happiness enough to be rid of him. "Good sir, you must bathe, as a reward for all your chivalry," she told Sir Luckless. So the knight clanked forth in the last rays of the setting sun, and bathed in the fountain of fair fortune, astonished that he was the chosen one of hundreds and giddy with his incredible luck. As the sun fell below the horizon, Sir Luckless emerged from the waters with the glory of his triumph upon him, and flung himself in his rusted armor at the feet of Amata, who was the kindest and most beautiful woman he had ever beheld. Flushed with success, he begged for her hand and her heart, and Amata, no less delighted, realized that she had found a man worthy of them. The 3 witches and the knight set off down the hill together, arm in arm, and all 4 led long and happy lives, and none of them ever knew or suspected that the fountain's waters carried no enchantment at all. That's a beautiful story. Look how they're healed. She's healed. She's rich. And she found love. Wow. That was a beautiful story. I just love the illustrations. Albus Dumbledore on the Fountain of Fair Fortune. The Fountain of Fair Fortune is a perennial favorite, so much so that it was the subject of the sole attempt to introduce a Christmas pantomime to Hogwarts festive celebrations. Our then herbology master, Professor Herbert Beery, an enthusiastic devotee of amateur dramatics, proposed an adaptation of this well-beloved children's tale as a Yuletide treat for staff and students. I was then a young Transfiguration teacher, and Herbert assigned me to special effects, which included providing a fully functioning Fountain of Fair Fortune and a miniature grassy hill, up to which our 3 heroines and hero would appear to march, while it sank slowly into the stage and out of sight. This is Professor Herbert Beery, who was the herbology master. He looks like a herbology master. 100%. That's Neville in 50 years. A young Transfiguration teacher. Okay. This is Professor Dumbledore. So handsome. Professor Beery eventually left Hogwarts to teach at WADA, Wizarding Academy of Dramatic Arts, where he once confessed to me he maintained a strong aversion to mounting performances of this particular story, believing it to be unlucky. I think I may say, without vanity, that both my fountain and my hill perform the parts allotted to them with simple goodwill. Alas, that the same could not be said of the rest of the cast. Ignoring for a moment the antics of the gigantic worm provided by our Care of Magical Creatures teacher, Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn, the human element proved disastrous to the show. Professor Beery, in his role of director, had been dangerously oblivious to the emotional entanglements seething under his very nose. Little did he know that the students playing Amata and Sir Luckless had been boyfriend and girlfriend until 1 hour before the curtain rose, at which point Sir Luckless transferred his affections to Asha. Suffice to say that our seekers after fair fortune never made it to the top of the hill. The curtain had barely risen when Professor Kettleburn's worm now revealed to be an ashwinder with an engorgement charm upon it, exploded in a shower of hot sparks and dust, filling the great hall with smoke and fragments of scenery, while the enormous fiery eggs it had laid at the foot of my hill ignited the floorboards. Amata and Asha turned upon each other, dueling so fiercely that Professor Beery was caught in the crossfire, and staff had to evacuate the hall as the inferno now raging on stage threatened to engulf the place. The night's entertainment concluded with a packed hospital wing. It was several months before the great hall lost its pungent aroma of wood smoke, and even longer before Professor Beery's head resumed its normal proportions. See Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them for a definitive description of this curious beast. I will be reading this book eventually once we get through this one. It ought never to be voluntary introduced into a wood-paneled room, nor have an engorgement charm placed upon it. That is so funny. His head is literally a balloon. There's the fire. Oh, poor Professor Beery. Those are the girls fighting. Great costumes. This is the Ashwinder. I feel like this is the, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that this is the eggs that have the silver inside them that is in the movies Fantastic Beasts and also in the video game. I wanted to go back and take a look at these photos. So these are the actors that played. This is Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn. So this is the Care of Magical Creatures professor who provided the Ashwinder. Wow. Well, I mean, it's got a good likeness to the dragon, the white worm, as it said. Okay. Oh. Oh, sorry, I didn't finish that sentence. It was several months before the Great Hall lost its pungent aroma of wood smoke, and even longer before Professor Beery's head resumed its normal proportions, and Professor Kettleburn was taken off probation. Headmaster Armando Dippet imposed a blanket ban on future pantomimes, a proud non-theatrical tradition that Hogwarts continues to this day. Our dramatic fiasco notwithstanding, The Fountain of Fair Fortune is probably the most popular of Beedle's tales, although, just like The Wizard and the Hopping Pot, it has its detractors. More than one parent has demanded the removal of this particular tale from the Hogwarts library, including, by coincidence, a descendant of Brutus Malfoy and a one-time member of the Hogwarts Board of Governors, Mr. Lucius Malfoy. No one is surprised. Mr. Malfoy submitted his demand for a ban on the story in writing. Any work of fiction or nonfiction that depicts interbreeding between wizards and muggles should be banned from the bookshelves of Hogwarts. I do not wish my son to be influenced into sullying the purity of his bloodline by reading stories that promote wizard-muggle marriage. Yeah, Draco would do that. Well, in other fan fictions, he gets with Hermione, so, you know, obviously it's there. Oh, he is exactly as I pictured him to look like. He looks like Armando Dippet. Professor Sylvanus Kettleburn. This is the Care of Magical Creatures. Professor, what are those? What those are? That is bizarre. I don't think I've ever seen these in Fantastic Beasts. Oh, let's read this. Professor Kettleburn survived no fewer than 62 periods of probation during his employment as Care of Magical Creatures teacher. His relations with my predecessor at Hogwarts, Professor Dippet, were always strained. Professor Dippet considering him to be somewhat reckless. By the time I became headmaster, however, Professor Kettleburn had mellowed considerably, although there were always those who took the cynical view that with only 1.5 of his original limbs remaining to him, he was forced to take life at a quieter pace. That's right, he was the Care of Magical Creatures professor that ended up retiring when Hagrid took over. Oh, so he was the one that spending time with his remaining limbs, which would have been 1 limb. Hilarious. I knew that guy looked like Lucius. They look like they're related. Oh. Anti-fountain parents and pupils. Yeah. Oh. Hufflepuff? No, Gryffindor. Gryffindor. Ravenclaw, mostly Slytherin. Makes sense. That's Hufflepuff. This is Gryffindor. Okay, well, there's some anti-Muggle Gryffindor and Hufflepuff people. That's proof right there. Okay, they look creepy. My refusal to remove the book from the library was backed by a majority of the Board of Governors. I wrote back to Mr. Malfoy explaining my decision. So-called pureblood families maintain that their alleged purity by disowning, banishing, or lying about Muggles or Muggle-borns on their family trees. They then attempt to foist their hypocrisy upon the rest of us by asking us to ban works dealing with the truths they deny. There is not a witch or wizard in existence whose blood has not mingled with that of Muggles, and I should therefore consider it both illogical and immoral to remove works dealing with the subject from our students' store of knowledge. This exchange marked the beginning of Mr. Malfoy's long campaign to have me removed from my post as headmaster of Hogwarts, and of mine to have him removed from his position as Lord Voldemort's favorite Death Eater. So this is Malfoy. This is Professor Dumbledore. Yeah, he's exactly as the book described him here. I didn't think Lucius was that old, but still pretty cool. My response prompted several further letters from Mr. Malfoy, but as they consisted mainly of opprobrious remarks on my sanity, parentage, and hygiene, their relevance to this commentary is remote. Oh, that's a great photo of Voldemort. Very creepy. Wow. That is awesome. Okay, that is the end of that chapter. We'll be continuing. We'll have a video out tomorrow.